Hello, very good evening to you and a warm welcome to the Turning Point for ITN Sri Lanka. Our guest this evening is a man well versed with matters of the people, and he's of course Mr. Kesaralal Gunasekara, who's former parliamentarian and also former deputy mayor and the Dehiwala Mount Lavinia Council. And we're delighted of course to have Mr. Kesaralal Gunasekara on the program. And this is how we normally do it. We'll give you a card, you can have a look at who the guest is. Thank you, Kesaralal Gunasekara, for being on the program.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Faraz.
And how do we balance the people's expectations? I've been around the country doing an independent survey of my own. I've been speaking to quite ordinary people whom I meet on the road or wherever. And they all talk about economy. Badu mila wedi.
Coupled with cost of living.
Yes, but they also say this, that they appreciate and they value the stability that has been in the country for the last 2 years. Whoever it was or is, the fact is the people can, there's availability of fuel, gas, cooking items and medicine and so on, albeit there were a few dodgy deals on the medicine, but apart from that, everything's here. But they say the cost of living is high because the prices are high. So how do you balance that with the people's expectations is the question today.
For us, the issue is much more deeper than that. Of course, I totally agree with you with regard to the cost of living. I feel as far as I'm concerned, the way I see things, the gap between the haves and the have-nots have widened and keep on widening, which is a very, very bad sign. That is why I think in the first place, Aragale also came out because of that. So although the Aragale has come to an end, I still feel the sparks are still there. The sparks are there.
But you know, when you look at in terms of growing our economy back again to where it was,
it'll take time.
It'll take time. But you can't do that when you have protesters lining up the streets all over the country. I was with some investors from Abu Dhabi. We were in a helicopter. And the only thing they could notice, they looked down out and said, why are there queues there, and there's a queue there, and there's a queue here? Protests and so on are bad news for investors.
Protesters is always a bad news for the economy, but the government, whoever who's governing, has to understand to govern in such a way that the protesters don't come up. So if you carry out your activities and you're governing in a manner that we don't create protesters, we don't have protesters.
But to do everything or anything that you want to do, we need to get the economy right.
Correct.
We agree on that, right?
We totally agree on that.
Now,
but it's an economy that runs
driven by else.
It's an economy driven by the private sector.
Well, that's how it should be, because in most economies, including in China, they went away from their traditional model and approached what we call the Western model, where government really has no business to be in business.
Correct.
But can facilitate. But having said all that,
and set up the environment.
Indeed, the law and order and everything else. But none of this, as my guest Dr. Rajita Senratna pointed out yesterday, none of this comes into play if you can't fix the economy. And the economy now is in a stable position. People say to me, "Polim ne, kanna bonna tiyeno, lamai iskole yeno, habai badu mila wedi." But there's now some people who say that the people are suffering because the taxation is high, and that any future government, if it is not this government, will renegotiate or seek to renegotiate with the IMF. But, Kesaralal, how possible is that? Or is that just political rhetoric?
No, as far as the IMF is concerned, they have specifically mentioned they maintain the fact that any incoming government can renegotiate. That is always a possibility, but I still feel that the main structure cannot be adjusted. So you could have certain discussions, etc., on certain issues, but the main structure still remains intact, and everybody understands it. I think what people are trying to say is that they prefer to renegotiate on certain issues, which is fair.
Would you say that the window of opportunity is there right now, because the people have now really understood that we need to pay proper pricing for petrol, proper prices for gas, proper prices for potatoes, onions and everything else?
Correct.
The government can't be subsidizing us forever and a day.
Yes.
So people...
But towards the latter part, before the 2020 also, that was introduced.
Absolutely.
With the exact prices of charge.
That's right. But now the people are getting used to paying the taxes. They know why, and it's sunk in.
Correct.
And really, if you are patriotic and if you are liable to pay taxes, you must pay your taxes.
I totally agree. But there is another point of view also for us, where when I speak to some of my friends, they say, look here, as far as we are concerned, we are in this situation because of certain actions by politicians. I don't want to mention as to who the politicians are. Why is it that any government is not going after that as well, inquiring into taking action, etc., which is also wrong? Because you know why? If this keeps on going, corruption keeps on going, then we are not going to see anything.
No, that's true.
We need to understand.
I think we need to focus our energies on moving forward. Addressing corruption and all the other issues.
And rule of law.
And the rule of law.
Very, very important in the present day context.
Absolutely.
Rule of law creates an environment which is conducive for everything.
Well, you saw what happened in Bangladesh, where the rule of law obviously broke down. And, you know, it was far more serious than in Sri Lanka.
Correct. I still feel for us, I may be wrong, but I still feel that the Bangladesh situation arose as a result of the gap between the haves and the have-nots. That was the underlying factor, and something else triggered that whole scenario.
By and large, and I think we need to pat ourselves on the shoulder, and that is this, that no matter what happened, we had Aragalia and all that, but our people, the people of our country, were not half as brutal and violent as what happened in Bangladesh. And for that, the Sri Lankan people need to really pat ourselves on the back and say, hallelujah, you know, God bless everyone. Because we didn't act like that.
That's correct.
But that's because we managed to get it all locked up. So that's very important. So, but what are the chances of really renegotiating some aspects of the IMF transaction without jeopardizing the stability that the IMF transaction has given our country today?
No, I don't think even discussions that would take place in the future, if by chance somebody gets elected, I still feel that there will be certain areas only, because the main structure cannot be touched, and it should not be touched at all.
Because when one is in opposition, with all due respect to anyone who's in opposition and everyone, talk is cheap when one is in opposition, because the ultimate responsibility...
It's easier to criticize, I know.
Yes, rather than to do the action.
But at the same time for us, I must correct you on this.
Yes.
You know, on this, I still feel that if you look at the scenario in the present context, most of these things have arisen as a result of the failure of successive governments.
Yes,
if
it's
governments,
not one. It's not one
governments, if successive governments had the rule of law in place, minimum corruption, and a meritocracy in place, none of these things would have been there. Today we are struggling because of that.
Well, indeed, but we are also struggling because of the bankruptcy of the economic policies. Another guest on our program, Mr. Rosipala, told us that we're not really talking about financial bankruptcy in being unable to service our foreign loans, bankruptcy of sound economic policies. And the ability to adapt according to the changing ground.
Correct. And changing economic policies with a short sight in mind. That's also another issue, I feel.
And do you feel that if the Sri Lankan government, whoever that is, goes to the IMF and says, you know what, chaps, sorry, but Banda and Pereira and Fernando are having terrible trouble paying all these taxes, so we're going to readjust them. What chances of success?
Well, if you're talking about the taxes, yes, there is a chance, because you know why? Even the current government also has been talking about it, because the threshold has to be changed.
Right.
So there you go.
There
are certain issues which needs to be readdressed, I feel.
But
honestly,
it
has to be readdressed as quickly as possible.
I like talking about patriotism and traitors. It's the opposite. We had President Mahinda Rajapaksa, who a long time ago, he said, there are only two types of people in this country. The people who love Sri Lanka and the people who are traitors. And I thought it reflected the essence of what it's all about. But
I don't subscribe to that.
No, you won't subscribe to that. But that's what our president said, and he is, or he was, one of the most popular men.
Yes.
On this island.
There's
no two words about it. Absolute national treasure is our Mahinda. But not to detract from all of this, that really the people are frightened as to what happened after we had lockdown, the economic crash, the farmers didn't have their fertilizer and so on. So today, they are living in a holding pattern where their lives are better than it was on those dark days. We don't have any power cuts.
You can't say better, because they are paying through their nose. But I still feel, for us, I must correct you on one thing.
You can do that after we come back from the break.
Okay.
And this is the Turning Point. Let's go for a quick break, and we'll be back with Mr. Kesaralal Gunasekara for ITN Sri Lanka.
තලතා අත්හල දුරය අකාරුණික වූ කාලගුණය පාසල් අසලට ආ වීදුරු බෝතල් ඉරානයේදී දිව්‍යහිමි වූ පාකිස්තානුවන් දෙස් විදෙස් පුවත් රසක් සමගින් හමුයමු සවස 6:30 අපගේ ප්‍රධාන පුවත් විකාශයත් සමගින්.
Kamuda macang, prima kotumi, fantamai.
සමේ ඇතුළටම ගමන් කරමින් ඩාර්ක් ස්පොට්ස් අවම කරමින් දෙගුණ එක ග්ලෝ එකක් ලබා දෙයි. Glow and Lovely Serum Cream. මංචි ටිකිරි මාරි.
කොහොමද ටිකිරි මොලේ?
ගුණ පරපුරක සහතිකය Anchor.
Prima kotumi, fantamai.
උදා වෙන හැම දවසක් පැතුම් සැබෑවන සුබ දවසක් අතපුරා ජය වෙදන හොඳ දවසක් අද කෝටිපති වැසි වසින දවසක් කෝටි පහකින් නැරඹෙන ජයමල්ලක් දිනපතාම පිරිනමන අද කෝටිපති සමග හැම දවසක්ම සුබ දවසක්.
ලක්ස් කියන්නේ සබන් ගැටයක් විතරක් නෙවෙයි සමට සංස්කාරයක්. නව ලක්ස්.
චාකෝල් සහ ග්‍රීන් ටී සාරයෙන් හිසේ සමහි ඇති විෂබීජ 99.9%ක් විනාශ කරන ෆර්ස්ට් වොෂ් කොන්ෆිඩන්ස් සමගින් හඳුන්වා දෙන නව ටැන්ටෙක්ස් ඩීටොක්ස් ප්ලස් ක්ලීනස් ෂැම්පූ.
ද්විත්වාරක්ෂාවක් දෙන නව ක්ලෝගාඩ් නැචරල් සෝල්ට්.
සර්ෆ් එක්සෙල් පළමු සේදුමෙන් ඉතා පහසුවෙන් තද පැල්ලම් ඉවත් කරන කම්ෆර්ට් ප්‍රමියම් සුවඳ සමගින් දැන් රුපියල් 540කට පමණයි. ග්‍රෑම් 160ක් ලංකාවේ වාසිම මෙලකට තියෙන පැක් එකක්. සිග්නල්.
බුද්ධිමත් ඇගේ තීරණය ප්‍රීමා ස්ටෙලා. අපි හැමෝම කැමති හැමදාටම සන්රයිස්. මුළු පවුලම රසය සදයි. සැමටම රස සන්රයිස්. රසවත් වී සතුට බෙදයි. ප්‍රීමා සන්රයිස්. දවස පුරාම සන්රයිස්.
Introducing Prima Kothmi Korean Ramen.
Let's fire it up. නව best ever sunlight. පෙරටත් වඩා සුවඳක් සමගින් සුපිරි සේදුමක්.
ඡන්දේ කොහොමද? මැතිවරණ කොමිෂන් සභාවේ සභාපති RMAL රත්නායක, මැතිවරණ කොමසාරිස් ජෙනරාල් සමන් ශ්‍රී රත්නායක. සුධර්මන් සමක තුලාව හෙට රාත්‍රී 10:30ට.
And welcome back to The Turning Point. I'm in conversation with Mr. Kesaralal Gunasekara, who's just told me that I've been mistaken. About what?
No, for us, I have a different view.
Okay.
What you said was a statement made by so many people, but I have a different view. I still feel what happened to us was we ran short of foreign exchange, and as a result, we ran into an issue where we could not pay our loans at the correct time. When that happens in the international arena, you are declared bankrupt. Technically, the economy did not crash. Huh?
No.
Even if anybody says that economy crashed, no, I don't agree with you. I agree with that person. I feel that the economy was okay, but we ran into problem. Therefore, we had to ration and do various things. But no sooner the bankruptcy comes in, then all our payments comes to a grinding halt.
Well,
then what happens thereafter is whatever that was coming into the kitty could be used for petrol, diesel, various things. So within a short period,
corporate Sri Lanka did take, our productivity did take a hit. The production of tea, for example, was down by 43 million tons or 48 million tons.
Because the mindset changes, you know.
Well, no, but in terms of tea, we didn't have the fertilizer. We had somebody who dreamt of some bad idea, and then,
so those are wrong,
we
wrong
have
decisions.
Farmers in Hambantota who on the other side of the fence, they can see hundreds of millions of dollars spent on a highway, but they're looking at their brinjals and it's all withered and it's about that big.
Correct.
You know, so, and they are bankrupt because of the policies these are taken at the time. But back to the point. Right now, we are in a stable situation. What basis do you think this current round of elections is going to be decided on? What do you think the people will want to discuss the most before putting their chande?
I feel, number one, what they have in mind is, as you said, the economy, the cost of living, the gap between the haves and the have-nots, because that keeps on widening. Then rule of law, corruption. These are factors that will come out in the open. These are the areas that will come out in the open. That those will have to be addressed by all candidates, whoever is contesting. I feel.
Why do you think? I'm just looking at an earlier news report that Ms. Talitha Korala, one-time Minister of Justice and so on, has announced her resignation as Member of Parliament. What possesses Member of Parliament to do that?
I don't know. I still do not know as to why she did at this juncture after the nomination to Anado. Whether you'll have to ask her.
We'll have to ask. We'll have her on our program.
We'll have to ask her.
Talita, come on our program and tell us.
And answer, exactly.
Tell us why.
Tell us.
And
why it was not done earlier.
We'll tell young Atif to give her a call, all right? And so we'll invite her on the program. We'll ask her. Okay. But what do you think? What do you think the people will really want to know?
With regard?
In regard to this election, what's the biggest ticket item?
I still feel for us, all candidates need to understand that the embers are still under the ash. You still find embers. I mean, those things are still burning, and therefore that has to be addressed.
Which is what?
Aragalaya concerns need to be addressed. I'm not, when I say Aragalaya concerns, those factors must be taken on head on, and then give solutions to those things. That is very essential, because this is one thing that can spur up any problem. We don't know.
That concerns you?
That concerns me.
Does it not concern you that the people's fear is that they won't have access to fuel, gas, and availability of food?
No, that will not be a problem.
Well, it was a problem when we didn't have money to bring our.
That is because we were settling our loans, etc. Now there is a time period.
Yes.
We'll have that problem back again in 28.
But it was a problem because when we couldn't pay for our fuel.
Correct.
The farmers were actually having to throw away their produce because they couldn't transport it anywhere.
Correct.
So,
but all those were as a result of the mismanagement of the much earned foreign exchange. I would use the term mismanagement.
Mismanaged. What matters most?
What everybody needs to understand is you can only pay what you earn. You can pay out what you earn. Whatever you
Your
earn,
ability
you can pay
to
out.
pay.
If you go beyond that, you are in trouble.
Well, many years ago in Britain, we had one Margaret Thatcher. She never lost an election in her life.
The Iron Lady.
Yes, the Iron Lady. Never lost an election in her life. But she was edged out because of her policy on the poll tax, what they call the poll tax, the council tax. She refused to link it to the ability to pay. And that cost her her job and cost the people of Britain one of the best prime ministers ever, the most famous ones. So in Sri Lanka, don't you think that the people are frightened of going back to the fuel queues, the gas queues, and the shortage of food, the shortage of medicine?
What's the fear?
That it won't be there.
No. I told you, I corrected you, that we ran into that situation because much needed foreign exchange was not available.
Yes.
But now that is not the case, because we don't have those, we are not making those payments.
Do you think the people of Sri Lanka are grateful or not?
Pardon? They're always grateful.
Yeah.
For us, there is one thing else that
in that case, yes, please do.
There one thing that many people are of the view, treasury, when you refer to the treasury, you got to understand treasury is our money.
Yes, of course.
Treasury is money collected from us.
Yeah.
So, taking money from the treasury at all given times, and Parliament also has to understand, I see so many requests for funds outside the budget. Once a budget is approved, you put that into operation. Don't go for supplementaries. Why are you going for supplementaries at each and every turn? If the Speaker is permitting supplementaries to be introduced in that manner, you cannot do a job. You cannot do a proper job. You cannot take this country forward. Because any other country, a budget is a budget. You can't go beyond.
But if you were to take a mic and a camera and go to rural Sri Lanka now, or non-urban Sri Lanka, don't you agree that for them, for those outside of the urban areas, that what matters to them is the security of having fuel, electricity, gas, food on the table, and that their kids can go to school.
You,
in no particular
are
order,
trying to
they're all 5.
No, you are trying to connect it to the situation of the bankrupt operation.
No, not the bankrupt operation.
Not
but
before that.
when we had
Not
no
before
dollars,
that.
I mean, we were in a position where we didn't have $20 million to pay for a shipment.
That's exactly what I'm trying to tell you.
Yes.
Mishandling
But
of the foreign exchange.
the knock-on effect of that is that our entire distribution system came to a halt.
Yeah, the question is this: you need to understand. Keep on borrowing, and when you are unable to repay, you run into a problem. That is exactly what happened. Technically, the economy did not crash. Huh?
No.
I don't agree with the statement that the economy crashed. I don't think so.
We're into our last 2 minutes, Mr. Kesaralal Gunasekara, former parliamentarian, former deputy mayor of Devula, Mount Lavinia. We're in our last 2 minutes. In Devula, Mount Lavinia, an area you know well, what do you think is the most number one item before they can say, I'm going to vote here, there, or wherever?
Cost of living.
Cost of living.
Cost of living, rule of law. Many people, even the poor man on the street, rule of law, corruption. Everybody, all the main candidates need to understand that they must stamp down on corruption. That is extremely important.
And one more question, then, very quickly. Do you think that people are kind of happy at the moment? Happier than they were 2 years ago?
Of course.
Of course. Kesaralal Gunasekara, thank you very much for being on the Turning Point for ITN Sri Lanka.
It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure for us.
Thank you, ever so kind. And that's the way it was on the Turning Point for ITN Sri Lanka. Monday to Friday, 6 to 6:30 p.m., usually live. We've got an exciting guest coming tomorrow and every day during the week, including several ministers and so on in the week after. Take care and bless you all.